Greetings, YouTube. I found myself thinking about elementals and magical realism. And by magical realism, I mean where we have at least vaguely realistic world like ours, with magic thrown in to some extent. And the biggest example I can think of that would be the Harry Potter universe. Um, but I'm sure that everyone that's played in any kind of a D&D campaign at one time or another has played an adventure where you ended up in our world and trying to deal with the ramifications of being magical creatures in an our world. And I know that every campaign I've ever run, I have ended up with Gamma World characters in a D&D world or D&D characters in a Gamma World adventure. It always happens. I like the crossover. And at least vaguely, the Gamma world is a little more relativistic than is pardon me, than is the D&D world. Even though Gamma World mutations have about as much bearing in the real world as do Marvel mutations. And I will be honest, I tend to run Gamma World campaigns a lot like a very focused Marvel universe, I guess. But when thinking about the nature of magical realism, what happens to elementals when we expose them to a more science fiction aspect of that? So if you've got elementals here on right now, earth elemental, water elemental, fire elemental, and air elemental, the four classics. There are other elementals in D&D and Pathfinder. We're not going to discuss those right now. I'm just going to talk about the big four. And if they're here, they behave as they would in the game per normal. But what happens when you put any of those into space? Now, the earth elemental shouldn't be affected in any way, shape, or form. The earth elemental is just going to go about him or her its bad self. It's the other three that are going to be interesting. Does the fire elemental extinguish? Does the fire elemental need air? It doesn't need fuel, it burns forever. But does it need air? Does it consume air? There's a question for you. If you've got a sealed container and you have a fire elemental in there, is that fire elemental consuming air, or does it just burn because it is a conduit to the elemental plane of fire? So will it function out in space without any adverse effect, or will it extinguish? Is it a minor star, or is it just a fire? The air elemental, what happens to it? There's no air pressure around it. Does it just dissipate? Or again, because it is bound together through magic and it is a conduit to the elemental plane of air, does it continue to exist? In the close to absolute cold of space, which I believe is 3.8 degrees Kelvin in general, does it freeze? And then we go to the water elemental. Does it freeze? Also, no air pressure. Does it dissipate? Or again, does the magic supersede this? So the bigger question I'm asking is, where does physics and where does magic meet when it comes to a world that looks vaguely like ours but has magic in it? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, that kind of a universe. The Supernatural series. There's lots of universes that have been used. Even True Blood has got supernatural beings in it. And there's magic in these worlds to some extent or another, or these things wouldn't exist. But where's the crossover? And how much of one thing affects the other? I remember in the Dragonstar setting, which is an excellent setting, I think, it says that magic does things that physics can't. And I thought that was a great definition of the difference between our laws of physics and the laws of magic in our world, in a world of the laws of physics. And how does that affect the elemental I'm discussing? How does that affect anything else? And is that sweet spot I'm talking about, is it a Is it a moving target? Does it vary from person to person, from campaign to campaign, to setting to setting? Is it always right here? Has your opinion of where this thing is? Oh, it changes over time, and now it's way over here. Has you become less tolerant of that intersection, or have you become more tolerant of that intersection? I can remember a guy on one of the D&D Usenet, Seawasp, I believe his real name is Rick Spoor. He's a science fiction and fantasy author now. He actually makes his living that way. And him talking about the fact that he once ran a campaign. I think it might have been a short run, but everyone in the campaign came to the table with a character of their favorite character, regardless of genre or system. So everyone came to the table with their own thing. And then he forged all of them together into one cohesive team and had them adventure, even though all of them were playing characters of different genres and different entire systems at the same time together. It was a task that I would not want to take on because I'm a big believer in believing in consistency, and CWAS took on a task right there, which is Herculean in its nature, in my opinion. But apparently they had fun. That's all that matters, I guess, right? So for CWASP, that intersection is a moving target. It can move from character to character to character in the same scene, and he's okay with that. And I don't know. I haven't done the crossover thing in a long time, and when it comes to really try to be realistic, and I know that you can't just have our universe with magic tossed in and have it be our world with just a veneer of magic on top. It changes everything fundamentally from square one. So I've become less tolerant of that. The Harry Potter universe drove me nuts because it's inconsistent and they don't apply things that make any kind of sense. They could save billions of lives in suffering if they would apply magic to the real world, but no, we have to be all exclusive and emo and stay away from the eyes of men. Yeah, it was such a bullshit. So, where is that spot for you? Can elementals function in space? Is this a silly question? Did you like the Dragon Star setting? There are fun things that can be worked out with here, but I'm curious about how people handle that intersection between physics and magic. Where is that sweet spot for you? I guess if I were going to say it would be Dragon Star. But for me, Dragon Star is an inherently D&D setting. It's just a D&D setting that has more physics rules than your average D&D. It's a little more grounded in some kinds of reality because it's got science fiction and fantasy crammed all together. It is a bit more reminiscent of you taking the S3 module from, was it Blackmore or Greyhawk? Blackmore, I think, and taking that and cranking it to 11. But it most definitely is a D&D setting. But tell me, what do you think about that intersection between physics and magic?